A violent tremor rips through steel, timber. Beneath the wooden flight deck of a Japanese fleet carrier, gasoline vapor ignites in a single blinding instant. The blast surges up, tearing through hangar bays packed with aircraft. Bombs cook off, fuel tanks rupture. A column of black smoke punches into the tropical sky. Sailors thrown against bulkhead as the deck above them buckled and split. 3 hours earlier, this ship had launched aircraft toward the American fleet. Now she is a floating furnace. Her name is Shōkaku, and in this moment, the last strength of Japan's carrier arm begins to die. June 19, 1944. The Philippine Sea. American forces are landing on Saipan in the Mariana Islands, a position that places Tokyo within reach of B-29 bombers for the first time. If the Marianas fall, Japan's industrial heartland will lie exposed. Supply routes from Southeast Asia, oil, rubber, bauxite, will be severed. The Imperial Navy has committed nearly everything it has left. Operation Go, a final decisive carrier battle meant to crush the American invasion fleet and restore strategic balance. At its center sail 3 carriers, Taihō, Zuikaku, and the veteran Shōkaku. Shōkaku was no ordinary carrier, launched in 1939 and completed just months before Pearl Harbor. She displaced over 32,000 tons and stretched more than 250 meters from bow to stern. Capable of 34 knots, she carried more than 70 aircraft into battle. Improved armor protection, advanced damage control system, efficient aircraft handling. In 1941, she was among the most formidable carriers afloat. Her air group helped devastate Battleship Row at Pearl Harbor. Since then, she has ranged across the Pacific, Coral Sea, Eastern Solomon, Santa Cruz, Guadalcanal. She had been battered before. At Coral Sea in May 1942, American dive bombers struck her with 1,000-pound bombs, ripping holes through her deck, killing more than 100 crewmen. At Santa Cruz months later, more bombs found their mark. Fires raged, steel twisted. Yet each time she survived, limped home to Japan, and returned to combat. Among her sailors, a belief took root. Shōkaku blessed, unsinkable. But by 1944, something vital had changed. The ship endured, her pilots did not. 2.5 years attrition had drained Japan's naval aviation's veteran. Coral Sea, Midway, the grinding struggle for Guadalcanal, the skilled airmen who once dominated the Pacific gone. Fuel shortage, crippled training. Replacement pilots often logged fewer than 100 flight hours before entering combat. Across the ocean, American aviators averaged 300. Radar-guided fighter control, armored Hellcats, armed with 650 caliber machine guns. The balance had shifted decisive. Admiral Jisaburō Ozawa knew his force was weaker, yet he gambled on range. Japanese carrier aircraft could strike from nearly 300 nautical miles. American plane, roughly 200. Ozawa intended to launch first, strike hard, then land at Guam to refuel and rearm before attacking again on the return leg. Land-based aircraft from Saipan, Tinian, and Guam would reinforce the assault. In theory, a devastating hammer blow. In reality, it depended on precision, coordination, and experienced aviators, qualities Japan no longer possessed in abundance. At dawn, on June 19th, Shōkaku turns into the wind. Her engines drive her forward at 20 knots across a calm, endless sea. Deck crews guide Zero fighters, Val and Judy dive bombers into launch position. Young pilots climb into cockpit. Some adjust goggles with steady hand. Others hide unease behind ritual bows. At 8:30 a.m., aircraft thunder down the wooden deck and lift into the rising sun. 69 planes from Shōkaku alone join more than 400 launched by the mobile fleet that morning. 90 minutes later, American radar operators detect incoming formation at long range. Task Force 58 respond, discipline, precision. Hundreds of F-6F Hellcats climb under radio direct from Combat Information Center below deck. American pilots are guided by altitude, bearing, and speed, a web of information invisible to their adversary. At 10:36 a.m., contrails converge high above the Philippine Sea. What follows will enter aviation lore as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The massacre unfolds in minutes. Hellcats dive from superior altitude, firing in disciplined bursts before climbing away. Japanese pilots attempt tight-turning engagement, but American fighters refuse to dogfight. Boom, climb, re-engage. One after another, Zeros fall, trailing smoke. Those who break through face dense anti-aircraft fire and proximity-fused shells detonating in lethal arc. Of Shōkaku's 69 aircraft, 42 are lost in the first wave. Not a single American carrier is struck. Wave after wave meets the same fate. In less than a day, more than 300 Japanese aircraft are destroyed. For Japan, it is not merely defeat, it is annihilation of trained aviation manpower. Yet aboard Shōkaku, the carrier herself remains untouched. She steams in formation, recovering the few damaged aircraft that limp home. Deck crews prepare for landing operations. Few aboard suspect that the greatest threat no longer flies overhead. It waits silent low. Beneath that placid surface, the American submarine USS Kavala tracks the Japanese formation, a Gato-class boat on her first war patrol. She has shadowed the fleet since dawn. At periscope depth, Commander Herman J. Kostler studies the silhouette Shōkaku through a narrow lens. The carrier is turning into the wind to recover aircraft. Steady course, predictable speed. Escorts screen ahead, their attention fixed skyward. For a submariner, it is the rarest of opportunities. Kostler closes the range to 1,000 yards. Torpedo data computers calculate angles and speed. In the control room, red lights glow over tense faces. At 11:20 a.m., he gives the order. 6 Mark 14 torpedoes surge from forward tubes in rapid succession. The submarine heels slightly with each launch. Then, take her down. Kavala dives hard, descending toward 400 feet as destroyers race to investigate the telltale wakes streaking toward the Japanese carrier. 2 minutes later, the sea convulses. At least 3 torpedoes slam in Shōkaku's starboard side. One strikes forward, flooding auxiliary engine space. 2 more detonate amidships beneath aviation fuel tank. Steel tears open below the waterline. Thousands of gallons of high-octane gasoline spill into compartments. The carrier shudders but continues moving. Damage control teams scramble pumps and shoring timber. The list is slight, only a few degrees. To seasoned officers, the ship still appears salvageable. But beneath the armored deck, a silent killer spread. Ruptured fuel tanks leak aviation gasoline to confined space. Shōkaku's ventilation system, designed to cool tropical machinery rooms, now draws vapor through duct corridors. The fumes are invisible, heavier than air in some compartments, lighter in others. Seeping into hangar bay, crew quarter, sailors report the sharp sting of fuel in their lungs. Some collapse. Pumps struggle against flooding. The carrier becomes a sealed chamber, slowly filling with explosive gas. For hours, destroyers drop depth charges in pursuit of Kavala, but the submarine escapes into deeper water. Above, Captain Hiroshi Matsubara refuses to abandon his vessel. Shōkaku has survived worse, he believes. Damage control continues relentlessly, yet vapor concentration rises to lethal levels. The carrier steams ahead at reduced speed, listing slightly, bow low in the water. From the outside, she appears wounded but afloat. Inside, the conditions are catastrophic. Shortly before 3 p.m., somewhere deep within the central compartments, an ignition source, perhaps damaged wiring, perhaps hot machinery, touches the vapor-saturated air. The result is instantaneous. A thunderous internal blast rips through the midsection. Bulkheads buckle. Flames race along fuel-lined surfaces. Seconds later, secondary explosions detonate stored bombs and ammunition. The entire central flight deck erupts upward in a towering fireball, visible for miles. The shock wave tears the carrier's spine apart. Fires sweep across the hangar deck, igniting fueled aircraft. Matsubara recognizes the truth immediate. Orders to abandon ship spread by shouted relay as communications fail. Sailors leap from the listing deck, sliding down ropes and nets into oil-slicked water. Destroyers close in dangerously to rescue survivors. The once proud flagship of Japan's elite carrier force now rolls helplessly toward her grave. The list increased 10 degrees 20, 45. Water floods uncontested through ruptured hull. The bow sinks first. For a moment, Shōkaku stands nearly vertical, her red-painted underbelly exposed above the wave, propellers still turning in the air. Then slowly slip beneath the Philippine. 3 hours 50 minutes after the torpedoes struck, one of the last veteran Pearl Harbor vanishes into 5,000 meters dark. Over 1,200 crewmen will not return. Rescue operations continue amid drifting wreckage. Destroyers Urakaze, Wakatsuki, and Hatsuzuki maneuver carefully through burning debris, fuel-slicked swell. Light cruiser Yahagi lowers boats into the water. Survivors, burned, oil-soaked, dazed, are hauled aboard by rope and net. Some cannot speak. Others stare silently at the empty horizon where their carrier had stood only minutes earlier. Captain Hiroshi Matsubara does not leave his bridge. Like many Imperial Navy commanders before him, he goes down with his ship. Of Shōkaku's crew of more than 1,600, over 1,200 are lost. While Shōkaku sinks, the larger battle continues beyond the horizon. Admiral Ozawa, convinced by faulty radio reports that American carriers have been damaged, presses forward. He does not yet grasp the scale of the disaster in the sky. Japanese air group, painstakingly rebuilt over the previous year, have been virtually erased in a single day. The mobile fleet still floats, but its striking power has been gutted. Aircraft hangars stand half-empty. Flight decks feel strangely quiet. Shōkaku is not the only loss that day. Earlier, the new armored carrier Taihō, pride of the Imperial Navy, had been struck by a single torpedo from USS Albacore. Like Shōkaku, she succumbed not immediately to flooding, but to gasoline vapor ignited within her own hull. 2 fleet carriers destroyed in hours by submarines alone. By the following afternoon, a third carrier, Hio, will be finished by American carrier aircraft. The Japanese carrier force is unraveling. On June 20th, American carrier aircraft strike at extreme range, pursuing Ozawa's retreating fleet into the fading light. Pilots fly beyond comfortable fuel margins to deliver torpedoes and bombs. Some will not return, forced to ditch at sea after dark. Yet the strategic outcome is beyond doubt. Japan loses 3 carriers and more than 600 aircraft over 2 days. The United States loses no fleet carriers. The imbalance of power in the Pacific becomes irreversible. The destruction of Japan's naval aviators is the most devastating blow. Nearly 400 carrier pilots and aircrew are killed in the battle. Many were newly trained. Some were the last remnants of the once elite pre-war cadre. Unlike ships, pilots cannot be rebuilt quickly. Training pipelines are crippled by fuel shortage. Flight hours are rationed. From this point forward, Japan's remaining carriers will sail with decks that cannot be fully manned. The Battle of the Philippine Sea becomes known among American aviators as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The phrase captures the one-sided nature of the air combat, but it conceals the deeper significance. What was destroyed was merely aircraft, but the operational heart of the Kido Butai, the mobile carrier strike force that had once terrorized the Pacific. The instrument that struck Pearl Harbor is no more. Of the 6 carriers that launched aircraft against Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shōkaku, and Zuikaku, 4 were destroyed at Midway in 1942. Shōkaku now lies 5,000 meters beneath the Philippine Sea. Only Zuikaku remains. She will follow in October 1944 during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. With her sinking, the original strike force ceases to exist. Strategically, the consequences are immediate. The American capture of Saipan, Tinian, and Guam proceeds without meaningful carrier interference. Massive airfields rise from coral and jungle. By November 1944, B-29 Superfortresses begin sustained bombing raids against Tokyo and other Japanese cities. The distance that once shielded the home islands has vanished. The war has come within reach of Japan's own shore. Without adequate air cover, Japanese convoys carrying oil from the Dutch East Indies become increasingly vulnerable. American submarines prowl shipping lanes, severing lifelines that fuel Japan's navy and industry. The loss of the mobile fleet's effective air arm means that surface ships must operate cautiously, often defensively. Initiative passes permanent to the United States. For the sailors who survived Shōkaku's sinking, the psychological impact is profound. Many had served aboard since 1941. They had witnessed triumph and catastrophe, sailed from Hawaii to the Indian Ocean, fought at Coral Sea and Santa Cruz. To them, Shōkaku was more than steel. She was continuity, proof that Japan's naval spirit endured. Watching her vanish beneath the sea signaled that an era had ended. The wreck of Shōkaku lies at a depth of approximately 5,400 meters, more than 3 miles beneath the surface. At that depth, pressure exceeds 700 times that at sea level. Sunlight does not penetrate. The hull rests in perpetual darkness, beyond the reach of conventional salvage. Unlike some of her contemporaries, Shōkaku has never been located. Her exact resting posture remains unknown. In August 1945, 14 months after Shōkaku's destruction, Japan formally surrenders aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. The empire's naval air power, once a symbol of audacity and innovation, is spent. The transformation from offensive dominance in 1942 to defensive collapse in 1944 occurred with astonishing speed. The Philippine Sea marks the irreversible tipping point. Shōkaku's career spanned 33 months of continuous combat. She logged thousands of flight operations, survived bomb strikes, and helped shape the early Pacific War. Her loss was not caused by overwhelming bombardment, but by vulnerabilities within: ruptured fuel systems, inadequate vapor control, the unintended consequences of design decisions made years earlier. It is tempting to see her sinking as inevitable, the product of American industrial superiority and improved tactics. Yet history is rarely that simple. A different ignition source, faster ventilation, quicker fuel isolation, any one of these might have bought time, perhaps enough to tow her to safety, perhaps not. In war, survival often turns on minutes, even seconds. The Battle of the Philippine Sea did more than eliminate ships. It shattered Japan's ability to contest the skies over the Pacific. From that point forward, remaining carriers would serve largely as decoy or sacrificial elements in desperate operations. The decisive carrier engagements that defined 1942 would never be repeated under conditions even remotely favoring Japan. For the United States Navy, the battle validated a new doctrine: integrated radar control, disciplined fighter tactics, industrial-scale production, and relentless training. The Hellcat replaced the Zero as the dominant fighter of the Pacific. Numbers mattered, experience mattered more. By mid-1944, America possessed both in overwhelming quantity. Shōkaku's sinking is often overshadowed by larger fleet actions, yet it symbolized the quiet lethality of submarine warfare. A single submerged adversary, unseen and unheard, altered the balance of a carrier battle before the main fleets even closed. Beneath the spectacle of aerial combat lay another war, silent, patient, and decisive. Today, somewhere beneath the Philippine Sea, Shōkaku rests in darkness. Her decks collapse, her aircraft long dissolved, her steel hull enduring unimaginable. No memorial marks the surface above, only coordinates on a chart. Yet her fate marks the moment when Japan's carrier supremacy ended, not with a grand fleet engagement, but with a chain reaction deep within her own hull.